Welcome back, 1570 AM Baltimore Positive WNST. We have Nestor Aparicio here on with us today. Nestor, welcome in.
Happy game day, game weekend, game Buffalo, underdogs at home.
Like it.
All the
Love it.
disrespects here this week, right?
Love it. Still a lot of noise, though, about Lamar Jackson, his contract. Still the biggest story, Nestor, in the NFL. It was the biggest story in the offseason. Continues into the regular season, particularly given Lamar's performance during the first three games.
There was a period here where we were the biggest deal in the land when Ray Lewis and Suggs, I would even say like in 5 and 6 the years we didn't win, we were a national story, right? Like early part of my career, people would call and say, they don't talk about us on ESPN. They don't respect us. They think we got Barney uniforms on. And then we win Super Bowls and we almost win. And we have, a legacy defense, right? That they're making 30 for 30s for 20 years later. But I don't know that the Ravens or Baltimore, certainly not the Orioles. I mean, Cal Ripken, 1995 was the center of the sports world. I would say Lamar is the center of the sports world right now. NBA's not playing, NHL's not playing, baseball's irrelevant. Don't tell Luke I said that, but it's really irrelevant now that the playoffs started. Football's the biggest thing in the country, and this is the biggest story, as you said, in the NFL, which makes it the biggest story in the country from a sports perspective. When Von Miller is, and the amazing part of this is from a player's perspective. If you ask any player, specifically African-American players, let's call this what it is. They will say this is the most disrespectful thing ever to not give Lamar the money. This is your sister dating this guy for 3-4 years, doing everything the right way, believing we're going to make babies and have a family. And everybody in the house believes, Shirley's going to marry Dennis and they're going to make and then all of a sudden, everybody in the house gets mad at Dennis because Dennis isn't bringing the ring out, right? And there's a little bit of that going on right now for DaCosta, for Bisciotti. It's low level. I mean, I'm pissed off at him because they threw me out. So if I write a column like that, I'm just being a jerk. But when Von Miller's taking the podium and saying, oh, what's going on over there? When Richard Sherman's saying, what's going on over there? Lamar, they don't respect you. So
Terrell Suggs, I don't know if you saw Suggs. He came out and said this is very
Ed
Reed first, and then right now it's Suggs on the heels of Reed's comments saying this is very uncharacteristic of the Baltimore Ravens. And you know what? He's 100% correct. He's right.
But the Ravens have never been asked to guarantee the highest contract in the history of the league for a quarterback who runs in the linebackers. And a quarterback who didn't come to OTA. Like, I don't know if they're in a hurry to get rid of Lamar or if they've figured this out that $52 million against their cap, they'll take their chances and go back and get a drop back quarterback. I don't know, but based on what he's doing every week out on the field, the sports world is up in arms. The whole sports world is up in arms about a Baltimore Ravens player. He's the most dynamic player in the league. That being said, he's got to go beat the Bills this weekend, right? And then go beat the Bengals after that. He's been doing this for 4 years, and they couldn't come to terms with him. And I think at this point, you and I talk every week about this. By the way, you and I are the only serious people around here. When I talk to other people, oh no, he won't hold out. He won't. Sure, I don't know, dude.
Oh,
he's
yes,
one of one.
Yes,
he might do whatever he wants. February 20th, whether he's got a ring or not a ring, he may say, I'm an NBA player. I'm gone.
Nestor, he should have held out. He should have held out this year. He's doing them a big solid, a big favor by playing for $23 million. And by doing so, he has backed them into a corner. Sportstrack.com, which is a website I follow, talks about current contracts and future contracts. Right now, they're projecting his market value at $261.1 million over 6 years. They haven't talked whether it's guaranteed or not, but that's where they put the man's value right here, right now, today.
Well, and, if he had an agent, if he had Scott Boras out in front of this, if he had Drew Rosenhaus out in front of this driving a train, it'd be a different thing. He doesn't. That doesn't mean that he's not going to get a better contract. I mean, that doesn't mean that in his particular case, he won't ask out and go be the quarterback of the Buccaneers next year, right? Like, literally,
he can call his shot. He can call his shot. He really can. And here's the deal, Nestor. We get polled every year by Ford Motor Company, and they ask you what you think. They ask you if you think the value of your franchise is rising or falling, right? So these football franchises, there's only 32 of them. There's over 3,004 dealers, right? So if you're a Steve Bisciotti, the value of your franchise continues to rise. As air travel speeds up, right? When we're able to get over to England in 3 hours in a couple of years, when they put a team in London and Frankfurt, Germany, as these franchises become global, Ness, they'll be worth 10, 15, 20 billion dollars. So a $250 million guaranteed contract investment in a generational player seems to me at this point, looking long term, like a very small price to pay.
That's a hell of a way to look at it. I don't know that Bisciotti looks at it that he's going to be here 10 years from now. And Bisciotti's smarter than you and me. I mean, I've sat with the guy. It's not like he hadn't put thought into
our
this.
W-2s, at least my W, it pales in comparison, I'm sure. So if that's the measurement of who's smarter.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, Bisciotti's thought all of this through. And I mean, when you sit with Steve Bisciotti, you're not thinking he's a foolish man.
No, he's a very smart man. He's a businessman.
And whatever this is for him with Lamar and whatever his vibe is on all of this, he's going to be the one that calls the shots. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not at practice because of him, not because of Chad Steele. I understand that. So, and that's why I took it to him, because I'm not going to not let him be responsible in the same way that if Lamar Jackson winds up somewhere else, it's not Eric DeCosta's fault. It's Steve Bisciotti's fault. You know what I mean? Steve Bisciotti's the one that's holding the money here. This isn't Eric's decision. This isn't John Harbaugh's decision.
But Nestor, as this thing keeps playing out, as long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy and keeps doing great things, he completes the season, whether he makes the playoffs, misses the playoffs, wins the Super Bowl, this price tag keeps rising. And I'm with you. He will absolutely not show up on a franchise tag deal. He will not show up for OTAs.
I'm talking to these Buffalo writers, and they're all like, he's under contract next year. They'll just tag him and he'll play for $51 million.
Okay.
I'm like,
no,
okay.
He won't. He will not.
Okay.
He will not. He's the kind of guy.
My son wouldn't have been playing right now. My son would have been in there and saying 232, and if you come in at 220, I'll listen. But I'm not even listening to 150 or 160 or 180 or Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson, who's 10 years older and washed up. No.
And if you're Lamar, you and I talk about Scott Boras, right? But if you're Lamar, let's say you had Scott Boras, he would have signed a long time ago for a below market value contract given the current conditions. So Lamar Jackson has bet on himself, and right now he is winning big, large, huge, and he is the kind of cat that, like an NBA superstar, he'll be able to call his shot, hopefully here in Baltimore. But the longer this thing plays out, maybe some calluses start to develop, some hard feelings on his end, and maybe they're willing to come to the plate. But you know what? His mindset's going to be completely different after the season. I guarantee you that.
Oh, and after the season's like blink, right? Blink. How long ago was June? Not long ago. Blink, and the season's over, and then they're either gonna have a championship or not. Probably not. By the way,
not.
Right?
Odds are they
Probably
won't.
Not.
Odds are they won't.
I mean, they're not even favored to win this week. At home, right?
Look, a lot of things can happen. A lot of season left to be played, but the odds are, you got a 1 in 32 chance of winning. Maybe better odds than some of the also ranked franchises out there. But the fact of the matter is, he's winning. He's winning big right now. It's still, and the story is not just the biggest story in the NFL, Nestor. It's becoming the biggest story in sports. Now we have Aaron Judge doing great things, chasing Roger Maris's record and whatnot, but it's still the biggest story in sports, and they'll continue to be the rest of the season.
Well, he's got to stay healthy, and they got to win. I mean, they got to win some games here, right? Like, he has to play well. He has to have people play well around him. He's got a fourth string left tackle, or maybe it's Ronnie Stanley. I mean, are you buying the Ronnie Stanley?
I sold a long time ago. I like being wrong. I like being wrong, but I just don't think he'll play again. And if he does, it'll be short-lived. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's made a lot of money. I think he's very cerebral. I just don't see him coming back, Nestor. And when Harbaugh says we'll leave it up to him when he's ready to come back, I mean, he's had a history of not practicing when he's hurt. He's had his history of not playing when he's hurt. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but he hasn't been a warrior in the trenches for the Ravens. He's a kind of guy that it has to be right for him, and that's what Harbaugh's been saying through gritted teeth, if you will.
Well, gritted teeth is one thing, but if you can't go out and physically do it, you literally can't do it.
And
it's one thing to say he'll go out and play. He'll have 1 play, 2 plays, 60 plays this week, 75 plays next week, 75 plays the next week. Then the Steelers are like, it's not about playing once, right? Like literally, that's the thing about this. It's not about I can go out and swing a golf club one more time because my back's screwed up. Maybe I can get through it once for a day. This is different. I mean, this is the next 2, 3, 4 years that they want to protect Lamar. They have all this money into him. I don't know. Maybe there's an insurance issue they have going on that if he can't get to the field, maybe they took insurance out on
they
him.
did. They absolutely did. I know a couple of people, a couple of sources that said they have insurance. They'll have insurance with Lamar Jackson as well if they ever sign a big contract. That'll take care of the team financially. What it won't take care of the team is against the cap, right? They have the dead cap money sitting there, so they'll be able to recoup a good chunk of that money.
Take care of the team is beating the Bills on Sunday. Like really, right? Like you can get your money back, but you can't get the games back once he can't play, back. And you're out there playing with a turnstile.
You also can't get the dead cap money back, which is the same thing with Lamar Jackson. Should they sign him to a guaranteed contract, that money will count against the cap. They'll recoup their money. They'll be okay financially, but what they won't be okay is the health of the team, being able to sign players, etc. And they will have dead cap money. It should Ronnie Stanley not be able to play. And we saw him last year. Got a glimpse of him. He didn't look right, and they shut him down for the season. And for me, Nestor, I'd rather see him later on in the season when he can come back full strength versus putting him in there when he's not ready. That's
well, if you see Falele this weekend,
I saw Falele last weekend. Well, Falele is a right tackle. He doesn't have feet. They better put Nick Boyle next to him or one of the other tight ends or chip that end, because whoever he plays against, it's going to look like an all-pro. And the Buffalo Bills, their defensive line is no joke, Nestor. They have a lot of Pro Bowl, all-pro players. They're deep. There's players on the defensive line the Ravens would have loved to have when they were coming up with the NFL draft. This is going to be a tough challenge in the rain at M&T Bank Stadium. I don't know how the rain is going to affect both teams.
Well, defensively for the Ravens right now, with their D-line and the injuries and linebacking core that they have, this is going to be a chase week. And I like Marcus Peters saying, once we get it together, we'll be all right. Well, you got to get the team together. And John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta would have said that back in April. Like, once we get the team together, once we get Stanley back, once we get all these injuries back, we're going to be, once we get the Gus bus, we haven't heard the Gus bus in forever, right?
No, you're right about that.
The Gus bus is one of the things they need more than anything.
They do.
When they do have a lead, getting into the third quarter, and if they can run the ball, they need that guy.
You mean like the Miami game? Like the Miami game when they had 4th and inches and they couldn't get it with 4 tries? The Gus bus would have been huge in that situation. You can certainly move the pile. Good to see Justice Hill. His burst has always been there. He's seeing holes. He's been a good compliment to J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins a factor in the passing game, but it all begins and ends with the trenches. Hopefully we'll see JPP this Sunday. Maybe he's got some fire left and there's some gas left in his tank. But this team, if they can hold it together, if they're 5-4, 4-5 after 9 games, Ness, and if they can get some players back without having additional injuries, then I think they'll have a real shot at making the playoffs and making some noise.
You're giving me 4-5?
4-5, 5-4. Again, all I'm saying is,
who are they losing to? The Giants, the Bengals? What are you doing to me here?
Maybe. But Tyus Bowser, David Ojabo, the Gus bus, these guys coming back later on in the season, I think could be difference makers with the Ravens. But they've got to hold together the first half of the season.
And Nick Boyle not getting on the field either. That's I don't want to say that's shocking, but it's been a while. I mean, I used to have Nick Boyle on the program back when I had access to players, and that was 5 years ago. You know what I mean? Like,
when you're talking about not just your ACL, your LCL, but also your hamstring coming off the bone. I mean, that was one of the most gruesome injuries ever suffered by an NFL player. For him to be even back on the field has been nothing short of a miracle. He's worked his butt off, but again, you're talking about bones and tendons, ligaments, muscle tissue, all these things. Look, we don't get better as we get older, physically speaking, and Nick Boyle's got a lot to overcome.
As you sit there and say that, I'm stretching right now because it's early in the day, and my hips are a little messy.
Look, we're in our 50s. We're not crashing into 300-pound linemen and 250-pound linebackers either.
This is a big game, though, right? I mean, and I know I talked to you about this the other day. One of the issues of me having those tickets up in 513 and all those years, the one thing we never did was sit there for a championship game. And it was something that for years and years, especially back in the Peyton Manning era, back in the mid-aughts when we lost that playoff game in 2006 to him, then Billick got fired and Joe came in. All of those years, the thought was 1 year we'll be 14-2. One year we'll be 15-1. One year we'll have a Lamar like in 2019, and we'll be the best team in the conference. The Ravens have been the best team in the conference once or twice, kind of, sort of, by the end of the year. But every year that Brady existed, Manning existed, Roethlisberger, just go on and on and on, we weren't the best team. This is a week where you're talking 4-5 and 5-4. We're talking different languages at this point because they had a 3-touchdown lead over Miami. They could have easily been 3-0. I don't want to, ifs and buts and all that, but I think that they are capable. Someone's going to host the AFC Championship game, right? This is the kind of game that determines whether you go to Buffalo or Buffalo comes here in January. And that's why this should be a pretty nerve-wracking game, because I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to go through Kansas City, Buffalo, and Bemidji and win 3 road playoff games. And I think that's too much to ask. It's too much to ask of Joe, even though we did it every year. We had bus trips and we iced down beer and went to New England and Pittsburgh and Indianapolis and any other guy, Kansas City, and won games in all those places. We never won in Indianapolis, but won in all the other places. This is the game that decides that. And that's what makes it so huge to me, because I think going on the road in January, not a recipe for success. I mean, you have to win this game if you want to play at home in January.
Well, the good news for the Ravens, they may be catching the Bills at the right time. I've had people tell me, well, they would have been better off had the Bills beat the Dolphins last week versus losing to them. I don't agree with that. The Bills are very banged up. The bad news is the Ravens secondary can't cover anyone. I mean, my fantasy football experts, they're like, if you got a Bills player in your team, wide receiver, tight end, start them. Start their second stringers, third stringers. The Ravens secondary just can't cover. So that's going to be the challenge for the Ravens. Can they keep the lid on Josh Allen and those prolific receivers that he has?
Well, it's not just covering; it's also getting after the quarterback, right? Like, can they get pressure? Where's Owa? Where's Houston? The veteran guys, are they getting on the field? JPP, he's going to get after it now. I don't know. 30-somethings chasing quarterbacks, you better have a lot of other things go right.
No, I don't disagree with you. And so far, Mike McDonald hasn't shown a big appetite to blitz, and rightfully so. I mean, you got to drop guys back and do the best that you can in coverage, but it should be a very good game, a very physical game. As you mentioned, it does have a home field advantage and the playoffs ramifications.
Well, big weekend in the league, always. These swing weekends where some teams can go to a 1-3, like the Bengals. You don't want to be 1-3. I mean, you got to be 2-2 level set here at the end of this weekend, or 3-1. And in the case of the Ravens, a chance to go 3-1 and put the Bills at 2-2 would put them in a driver's seat. That's going to take an incredible effort on Sunday.
No question about it. Nestor, as always, I appreciate your time. Keep doing great things at Baltimore Positive WNST.
We'll talk baseball playoffs next week then.
You got it. There he goes, Nestor Aparicio here at 1570 AM WNST. We'll take a quick break and come back right after this.